Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I owe each and every one of you a apology. The video you're going to see on Wednesday was a video you're supposed to see, was it 2 Wednesdays or 3 Wednesdays ago?
3, I think.
I think it was 3. It's a complete rundown of the history of Sandon, told by the man who's trying to save it himself. And it's an amazing watch. Hal is absolutely incredible to listen to. Now, why that stands out so important for me, I'm a lazy historian. I love knowing the history of everything, but I won't go online, I won't look in books, I won't go to museums. I hope one of our other YouTube friends that research stuff will tell me. But the way he tells a story just captivates me. It puts it into my head, kind of like I'm there, if that makes sense. Like I can see the story as he's telling it. And it's just amazing to watch. It's a 30-minute story, I think, before our GoPro cut off, but I think we got the whole story on it. I didn't want to put it in with the Sandon video because it just would have made it an hour long, and you're not gonna sit there for an hour and watch it. But I wanted to share the story because they put so much work, so much time, so much money, so much effort into saving this ghost city. So I hope you enjoy it, and here it is.
Consider. Hi.
Hi.
Come on in. We were just chatting about the building, but yeah, you wouldn't consider, you know, an alternative deal. Hi. Come on in. Come on in. Yeah. Yep. We're just chatting about the building and saying we tried to buy this building first in '73. That was a couple of years after my family made the decision we were going to try and stop the destruction of Sandon and reverse it. And but the owner of the building was determined to build his dream home out of the lumber of this building because it was beautiful. It was built out of the first trees, you know, and it was amazing lumber. I even offered to set him up an account at a building supply of his choice, offer him exactly the same amount of material and brand new, but it wasn't, no. And so he continued to dismantle it, and in that photo and that one up there, you can see there's no floors even left in the building. He'd taken the floors apart, cut all the joists off with a chainsaw, and the walls were unsupported. They were 3 stories of walls with nothing to tie them together, and in the breeze they creak and groan, and you could see them moving in and out. It was really creepy.
Yeah.
And then the only reason the building was spared in the end is 1988. He went to the doctor, and I knew it was bad at that point because he was not the kind of guy to go to a doctor. He went there, and by that time it was too late. He had cancer through him. The doctor gave him 3 months. He lived almost exactly 3 months.
Wow.
So then at that point he came to me and said, you know what, I'm never going to build my dream home. If you still want the building, I'll sell it to you. And so we were finally able in 1988 to buy what was left of it. And that's all that was left. It was just about ready to keel over. And so anyway, we're, you know, many years we had to get all this stuff special milled because the joists were 22 feet long, 2 by 14 full dimension fir.
Yeah.
Beautiful clear lumber. But anyway, now the structural stuff is basically done. This spring I did the moldings in here, and you know, working on this wainscoting and stuff like that. Nice to finally be doing something that's more artistic than just structural.
Than just, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they're all patterned off the remnants of the original moldings that we had. So they're identical.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the sort of part of the recent Sandon story. So, 1891, September, the very first gold prospectors discovered the galena, which is what's on the scale, and that wasn't of great interest to gold miners because there were no trails, there were no railways, roads, steamship lines, anything in this country, and the only people coming and going were the natives down around the rivers, some gold prospectors and some Hudson's Bay Company people, some trappers and stuff, but rarely would they ever come up here for any reason. And 2 gold prospectors that were working up in the Big Bend area north of Revelstoke got distracted by something of interest to them. They stayed longer than they planned, and by the time they were on their way back to Hot Springs Camp, which was kind of the only year-round settlement in the West Kootenay. Today we call it Ainsworth Hot Springs.
But, I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, but Hot Springs Camp was the only place you could actually go where there was, you know, a store and I think 3 hotels and an assay office if you were wanting to sample some minerals and that sort of thing. And they were coming down the Columbia River and would have had to go right down to about where Castlegar is today, and then take the portage past the Bonington Falls to Kootenay Lake, and then build themselves up or rent or buy a boat of some kind to get up to Hot Springs Camp. And they just were running out of time, so they decided to overland it from roughly where the cusp is. And when they got here, they had to bushwhack their way up to an elevation where they could actually make some time. And once they got up on the ridges, it was easy going. And they noticed right away this incredible rock formation that went right over the ridge. And it turned out they walked the length of it was 1,600 feet, and it was exposed. And it was pure, beautiful galena, just like that on the scale. And don't believe the weight on the scale, because the scale is watered out. It won't show any heavier than that, but it's about 3 times the weight of an average rock.
Really?
And it's predominantly lead, but of course galena typically has fairly high silver values too. So they noticed it and took some samples and basically went back to Hot Springs Camp. 2 unlikely partners, which these 2 cats are named after here. So Eli the black cat, that's Eli Carpenter, or Carpentier, I guess if you said it in the French Canadian way. And kind of an unlikely younger man, Jack Seaton, who was an Irishman. But they were the 2 guys that had been chumming together. And they got back to Hot Springs Camp. And Jack Seaton had loose lips when he was drinking, and I guess Eli Carpenter decided he wasn't going to be a reliable partner, so he made plans. Well, first of all, he got it assayed, and it was very high in silver, and he thought it might be worth something someday, and it wasn't at the time because there wasn't any way to deal with it. But anyway, he made up a plan to come back in a roundabout way and stake more claims. Didn't want to attract attention. And I guess the barkeep overheard him talking with his new partner, and he told Seaton about it. Seaton got 4 other guys, and they came right back directly the way that they had gone. And so by the time Carpenter got here, they'd staked a whole bunch of claims around there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and so there was this, a whole tale of double cross and just that sort of thing. Quite intriguing. But of course, there was no facilities and no infrastructure here to deal with it, so it was kind of little value. It was just interesting. And then in 1892, the following year, the word got out. It took a few months, but over the winter, some of the, especially down in the U.S., where there was already well-established mining industry, they started sending people up here to check it out, take notice. And these 2 happy guys discovered what turned out to be the world's largest nugget of galena ever discovered to this day, 125 tons. And that's just right up on Sandon Creek here.
Oh, wow.
And so they thought it was pretty great. You can see they've got it dug out. Looks like about that was what was actually showing. And the story was that one of the guys was trying to sharpen some fence, or tent poles.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't very good aim with the axe, but he took a whack off the rock, and it was beautiful gleaming galena. And so they thought it was the mother lode and staked a claim. And but it was a random chunk of float that had come down the hill from what turned out to be it became Canada's richest mine, which was the Slocan Star. And the Slocan Star was the builders of the beautiful powerhouse and everything here. But anyway, better, more knowledgeable prospectors came along, and they realized that it had come from above. And they went up and found the rock outcropping. And if you ever get time to go up there, just walk up there. It's a fascinating place.
Yeah.
The veins well, where the veins had been, they've mined it out pretty much, but you can still find the odd piece of that around there. But anyway, it turned out to be what probably in today's dollars would be billions of dollars worth of ore. So it became Canada's richest mining company ultimately. But the word got out, and thousands of people, including my mom's family, came in 1893-94, and by 1895 a crude community built out of local material, logs and stuff, was starting to form here in the Sandon. You'll recognize the hills. And later that year the railroads arrived, 2 of them, and Sandon just exploded with activity. As soon as they could bring in the big machinery, and Sandon became really the starting point of mechanized mining in Canada. It came here in a very big way. Rosslyn to the south of us, roughly at about the same time, and between these 2 places it brought things like electricity to the west coast immediately after they had Tesla and Westinghouse had made their demonstration of transmitting alternating current at Niagara Falls. Well, this all started to happen immediately after that. And so all the latest technology, including compressed air, came here. And yeah, Sandon became kind of like the Fort McMurray of 130 years ago. And so mining on a scale that had never been seen before in Canada, and of course a lot of problems that went along with that because there weren't rules and regulations and a lot of knowledge about big dangerous equipment and stuff. So anyway, that was just before the arrival of the railroads. These were taken 1 year apart in the 4 years that followed that, and very quickly it developed into one of BC's wealthiest and busiest and biggest cities. And here you can see already evidence of electricity there, and these buildings were equivalent to what would have been in the biggest of the BC cities. And it was a city. They incorporated it, became a city, and today is one of Canada's 2 ghost cities, as compared to hundreds of ghost towns.
Yeah.
But so anyway, 1900, massive big fire burned the downtown core, and that was the thing that seemed to happen to almost any busy mining community. They were usually built fast, a lot of buildings of wood, little planning. They just kind of happened, and fire was always a continual threat. In this photo you can see there's lumber and wreckage strewn all around here, and that was because as the fire was roaring through the downtown, some forward-thinking miners went and got some explosives, and they blew up the Canadian Pacific Railway Station, blew it to smithereens.
Wow.
And it worked. The fire didn't come across the tracks. So it allowed them to take their frustration out on the CPR, but it also saved a lot of sand in the process. Yeah. One of the things you might have looked at these and thought it's kind of odd in today's terms, but there's something distinctly missing here that's a very prominent feature of Sandon today. I would say the same in that photo. No? Oh,
Aerial view, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That might be just from up a mountain, right?
Yeah.
I won't keep you in suspense. Where's the river?
Underneath. Oh,
Yeah.
Is that the
You
boardwalk,
can't see it anywhere.
yeah.
And you can't see it in these pictures in the fire either, because throughout the entire downtown they built this fabulous flume, which then made nothing but sense for it to become a main commercial thoroughfare. So today people think it's a strange place because the buildings seem to face the wrong direction. So that's the back alley back here. But if you go around to that side of the building, it's the beautiful side. Date, the sign, all that stuff is there. And the green dot is what signifies this building, which was built immediately following the fire. 1900, they went at it quickly rebuilding. It wasn't like today where you had to plan for 5 years first of all.
Yeah.
This is only 2 months after the fire at this point. And here you can see the plume a little bit in this one. There it is there again too. So 1 year later, this is 1901, this building's 1 year old. And you can see it's just surrounded by buildings every bit as big or bigger, and wall-to-wall buildings. That's the beautiful side of the building, which is still there. And of course it's facing buildings now where the river channel takes up the whole swath. Half of Sandon is consumed by the river today. And that would be right through where all these blocks of buildings were on that side. That tower was up above the third floor. That was the fire hose drying tower with a big bell on the top. So where we're standing was in the central downtown fire hall.
Oh,
That
cool.
was this part of the building. There were jails and in another part, and an apartment down here for the jailer, who looked after the riffraff in the cells. But I'm sure he also had to keep the furnace stoked, so they had a great big coal furnace and a big coal bunker. Then on the next floor up, that was the city offices and all the different departments of the city. And the third floor was a courtroom, and the chief of police had his office up there. So the only real big difference between Sandon and, say, Tombstone, Arizona, or Virginia City, or Bodie, any of those Wild West American towns, and this was in every way an American town. It was almost entirely settled by people coming up from the U.S. All the economic connections, even the Great Northern Railroad was one of the players here that was competing against the CPR. Of course, they had all the ties to the big banks down there, the Guggenheims, the mining family, mining tycoons. But the law was the only difference. So in the U.S., it was pretty much the biggest gun. And here in Sandon, in Canada, although you wouldn't know it because they celebrated July 4th here for about the first 20 years. And most of the currency in circulation was American.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it made
That's
sense
crazy.
because, and the ties were, come on right in if you like it. Anyway, the law was different. So there was the famous Northwest Mounted Police. They had an establishment here. Provincial police were here, and the city police, because that was one of the responsibilities of an incorporated city, is they had to have a municipal police force. And probably be disappointed to hear that there was some corruption, because there was. So in 1902, as Sandon had kind of was settling down, so after the fire, Klondike Gold Rush lured about 2,000 people from Sandon in 1899, 1900. Metal prices were starting to drop, and so Sandon was on the decline. The mining companies were consolidating, and they were looking for a more stable workforce. Sandon was, like any Wild West mining town in its early years, a pretty wide open place, and it was hard to attract families and respectable people because it was just hard. There were 30 saloons downtown, gambling halls, big red light area, and of course, like Fort Mac today, people were making enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
And so they, Saturday night, mines would shut down. Sunday, Saturday night, people would come down. There were almost 2,500 miners up in the mountains around here, living in camps, and they'd come down and whoop it up for a night, and then Sunday they'd have to return, probably broke. But anyway, there was just
and hungover.
yeah, I'm sure. And but by 1902 there was a temperance movement here because the companies were trying to attract families, and the real wild guys had gone off to the Klondike in search of a new fortune, and the townspeople were getting increasingly disgusted with the chief of police that had his office up here. And it was because the chief of police owned a number of houses of prostitution, but also some gambling joints.
Classy guy.
Anyway, they ran him out of town. And he went to Silverton. But that was almost a day away in those times. That'd be like banishing to hope today. Or
Yeah.
but anyway, that was all stuff that happened in the building here, and
Very cool.
and then Sandon began, I guess, its first decline, and it's been up and down ever since the start. It's entirely linked to metal prices. Metal prices are entirely linked to, well, base metal prices are entirely linked to international warfare and major conflict in the world. Value of lead goes up in war times and that sort of thing. And so the Boer War, Spanish-American War, those were things that really stimulated the metal markets in the early days of Sandon. But by 1910, which is about 5 years after that's taken, you can already see there's gaps forming here and there. It's thinning out, you know, individual buildings burned down in a fire. But with the snow loads that we have here, buildings that aren't used need to be shoveled off, or they end up being a crushed up pile of lumber. But by 1910, Sandon was down to 150 people remaining in this big empty ghost city,
Wow.
full of big buildings and everything, and things were pretty dire. Most of the mines were closed, and but then again, along comes World War I, and back to the good times, and Sandon went into its second big period of prosperity, and that remained right through until the early to mid 20s. And then by that time, the 20s were a time of relative peace. Supply got up to demand, prices were going, mines were closing, and the big crash of 29, of course, every mine in the country basically had to shut down. They just couldn't afford to operate anymore, and Sandon became a ghost city again. And 1942 was the year that the federal government and provincial governments they took all the Japanese Canadians from the coast, and they took them away from their coastal homes and put them in the ghost towns of Kootenai. And Sandon was no exception. About 1,000 internees were put here in what was effectively an unwalled concentration camp. And there were still many old buildings, quite large buildings remaining at the time. There's a cluster of hotels here. But Second World War, after the internment was over, this was the first camp that was shut down, mainly because of the costs. They had bigger buildings and more costs in heating, and that's all the government cared about was the bottom line. So even though the internees petitioned to try to remain here, because the purpose-built internment camps were just shacks, and they were horrible. And Sandon and Greenwood were the only two communities where they largely or entirely used existing buildings. So they had churches and school and hospitals and all kinds of things that were left over from the mining days. In World War II, some people thought would bring the mining back. It did a little bit, but never to the extent of the First War, and it's probably because the mines were also becoming depleted and reaching such depths that they were not economically sustainable anymore. You know, and the costs are kind of exponentially increased in underground mining, because you go to any depth and just the handling of everything just becomes so expensive. They also flood if you're going down, and they have to be pumped out. So Sandon in the early 50s was looking pretty shabby, and by the time that beautiful flume here was wrecked in 1955, there were about 30 people remaining in Sandon. And these are pictures taken just following the event in June of 55. That one's the street right behind us here. It really looked like a bomb went off, but it destroyed the streets, because when the flume plugged up and the water couldn't go through it anymore, it just went through the streets. And hi, we're just doing a little chat, Sandon chat. But yeah, so it didn't wreck very many buildings, not entirely anyway. It damaged them. Like this building here, the piled the debris against that side, and rock and water and mud and driftwood and everything broke through those windows and filled up a large chunk of this level here. It was about 5 feet deep on that side, and just mucky debris, which we had to wheelbarrow out. We didn't know this floor was there until we got down to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it did that. It damaged a lot of the buildings, and then people just gave up on Sandon. They figured, well, it's never going to be a community again, and so the only perceived value was lumber and bricks, and that's what happened to all of Sandon's buildings. And there were hundreds of buildings throughout the West Kootenay built out of the bones of Sandon, and some of them still exist today, but in their second form. And then when I was young, in 1971, my family decided that it wasn't right to just let Sandon be demolished, because there was soon going to be nothing left. And so we made a decision at that time to try and acquire and preserve and bring back what we could on the hopes, because otherwise Sandon would be just a name on an old map, just like so many of the other towns.
Yeah.
And so pretty much what you see today is the product of that, and we've been gradually bringing things back. The locomotive is the biggest thing we've brought back. That's something that worked here 100 years ago, and then it went everywhere else in the meantime. And the power station, of course, is our pride and joy. But
That's very cool.
that's kind of the story of Sandon.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. That
so
was incredible.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well,
That was incredible.
my pleasure.
Thank you for all your guys' work.
And,
Yeah.
and you know what?
Thank you so much. No, that's good.
and you know what's really? I think I missed it.
Yeah. Thanks, bang around the door.
But the really great thing for us is seeing the number of people that see it for its history now and really appreciate it, and that's the biggest thank you that we can have. The first few years we were just regarded as plain crazy. And I remember my peers just saying, why do you waste your time up there? Burn them down, bulldoze them. Like, who cares?
It's history.
Well, that's what I would say. But of course, a lot of people would argue that Canada didn't have any history at the time, including my grade 3 teacher. I don't remember her name, but I remembered exactly what she said. And she said, the reason we don't spend much time talking about Canadian history in our class, because it was supposed to be about Canadian history, grade 3, right? And she said, it's because we don't really have any. Canada's much too young.
Well, compared to the rest of the world, but still, we have our history.
So we had a very brief chat about the Hudson's Bay Company,
Yeah.
some of the more notable explorers, some of the more notable native tribes, and then we went on to American and European history.
Yeah.
And that was what it was like when I was a kid. And I was the weird kid that actually thought that, history was cool. What you looking
Did
for?
he like come in?
No, I've been watching.
Okay.
He's been a good boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our cat's not allowed in here because he'll climb on the apparel.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm gonna-
Yeah. But anyway, it's really nice now. We're getting people coming and really enjoying Sandon and getting a lot out
It's
of it.
amazing.
It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, and there's,
I love stuff like that. I wish there was more people preserving
Yeah,
the history.
it's really sad that it took Canada so long to catch on, and it's funny because when I was young here, all the stores in the region, I'd go shopping in New Denver and Silverton even had a store still, but just all these local communities. So a lot of them had stuff like that because it was leftover, and they were ashamed of it. And
It's sad.
I can remember so many times hearing people that I knew talking about these stupid Americans that come up and pay money for this old junk. And they were so happy.
The register?
Yeah, they were
That
so
thing is
happy.
amazing.
Well, they wanted electronic plastic ones because they wanted to be, keep up with the Joneses, and
I love
these were
that.
just embarrassing old relics, and so they all that stuff it was just a constant flow out of this area, and of course Sandon was ransacked too. But so where do we have to go to get that? Boise, Idaho. There weren't any left in Canada.
How ironic.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but anyway, it's just funny how things change.
Yeah.
Because it was just the attitude that there was nothing here. It was just old and unwanted, you know, and
Crazy.
and people didn't see any beauty in it, and then now that attitude has largely changed. Yeah,
Yeah.
including the few that told me I was crazy when I'm young that are still alive. They've come around and realized that it's too bad we tore it all down, and it was awful because for me the last straw, there was a beautiful bank building up here, and it was sold for $300. That was what it was sold for. Plate glass windows, that 16-foot ceilings in there, and plate glass windows probably on 12 feet of that, and a huge walk-in bank vault, and all the beautiful doors and all the woodwork and everything, and the owner sold it for $300, and thought that was a good deal. Somebody was actually paying $300 for this, and they cherry-picked what they wanted, and like everybody else, they just threw the garbage off to the side and left it in a ruin. I think that building would cost $10 million to build today.
Yeah.
And just imagine if we had those buildings, you know, but it just wasn't, the awareness wasn't there.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, thank
hopefully
you.
we started a trend that will carry on past my time.
Yeah.
Very impressive what you guys do.
Yeah.
Right there. And we're
Yeah.
lucky to have people like you.
Yeah,
Well,
we are.
thank you for coming and
Yeah.
supporting it and
Yeah.
enjoying it. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. I've
Yeah.
heard you, obviously, we've been here before, and I told Michelle, yeah, that's Dory.
Yeah.
I just love it. I love the history of this place. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
absolutely amazing.
And you're just getting a touch of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I know. I could
So-
listen to how it talks about it.
1898. If I can find it here. I learned something new every day about sand. So it was really wet. They were having problems with landslides this time of year
Okay.
in 1898. And what it ended up happening is, let's see here, there we go.
Just
Pull it up
about.
here.
So guys, was that not just amazing to listen to? Hal is just amazing on talking about the history of the ghost city he's trying to save. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I apologize again that this video has come out extremely late. We were prepping for our other holiday that we went on. That was a 2-week holiday, and I just got busy and I didn't have enough time to get out the editing and all the other stuff done and plan for our recent trip that we're just on, which will start to show you, I guess, next Sunday.
Yes.
You'll start to see some unconventional videos, but also some really cool stuff and some cool mountain peaks that took our breath away, to be honest. But having said that, I hope you really enjoyed this video. The history of that place, like I said, is incredible. But until next time, get out there, enjoy life, and
Find your moments.
see you guys.
Bye.